Today we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. Today we're looking at the 15th ranked team from the NHL's regular season, the Calgary Flames. We're going to recap what happened last year, what should we expect from the Flames during the draft, free agency, and any trades they'll make to look forward to next year. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the Calgary Flames and discussing their offseason plans to prepare for the 25-26 NHL season. Now, if you're new to this series, essentially every team in the NHL will have their own dedicated video. We're going by the standings here, so we started at the 32nd ranked team in the NHL, and we're working our way up. We're now at the 15th ranked Calgary Flames, and we'll continue on till we get all the way to the number 1 Winnipeg Jets. So we're going to recap last year's results, take a look at some key team, individual goaltending stats, kind of look at where things are at, how the team changed, what do they have for cap space, internal business, so RFAs, UFAs, and then what should we expect from them going into the draft, free agency, and any trades that we might see for this offseason. So let's first get started by recapping the 24-25 campaign for the Calgary Flames. They had a pretty good season overall, falling just short of the playoffs with 96 points with a record of 41-27 and 14. I mean, in the Eastern Conference, they would have made the playoffs, but unfortunately in the Western Conference, they were just short. I mean, you can't get a whole lot closer than that. It was a big improvement over last year. Last year they had 81 points, so that's a 15-point improvement year over year, which is pretty substantial. Last year they were just under 500 with 38, 39, and 5 for a record. I mean, looking at their team breakdown here, they scored 220 goals, which is pretty low. That part needs to get better with this team. They were 29th best in the NHL. Last year they had 253. So they managed to score 33 fewer goals, and they still improved by that much. So defensively, they were obviously a lot better. They allowed 236 goals against, which was 19th best, but last year they gave up 271. So that's an improvement of 35 goals. So overall, their differential only improved slightly. They cut off 35 goals off the goals against, but they also scored 33 fewer. So they're only +2 ahead of what they were last year as a difference. Their specialty teams are not great either. They were okay. 21% power play, 19th best in the league. Now, 5 years ago, that would have been really good. By today's standards, that's below average. The PK is 76.1 for 25th best overall. So this team improved a lot, but if you take a look at the breakdown of things, the main area that they improved was cutting down on the goals against. So obviously, if they can find a way to add some more offense, they'll be able to take this result up a good notch again going into next year, but that's going to be the challenge. Now, looking at the goaltending stats, Dustin Wolf, of course, will be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year this year. He had a record of 29, 16, and 8, a 2.64 goals against, and a 910 save percentage. So Dustin Wolf had a really solid campaign. Vladar as his backup wasn't too bad either, 12, 11, and 6, and a 2.8 goals against, and an 898 save percentage. You would like to see that a little bit better, ideally over 900. The leading scorers for this team last year, they were led by Nazem Kadri, who had 67 points. Jonathan Huberdeau, who I think you can say he had a bounce-back season, but he's still not the 100-point player they traded for or that they thought they were signing when they extended him. But he did have a much better season in year 2 during his time here in the Flames organization. Put up 62 points. Matt Coronado had a good breakthrough season as well. He and Mackenzie Weegar both tied for 3rd place in points with 47. So obviously, like I said, you've had good breakthrough, real good, young seasons from Coronado and Wolf, which is great to see. Obviously, like I said, Wolf being a Calder nominee. Jonathan Huberdeau had a good improvement, only improved by 10 points, but his goal total went up the most, went from 12 to 28. So that is a significant increase for him. Of course, they moved off a few more players, including the trade that they did with the Philadelphia Flyers, bringing in Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee in exchange for Kuzmenko and Pelche. So, overall, we saw some more change, and we saw some good improvements, and this team should theoretically be able to continue building into next year. Now, going into this offseason, they have $28.1 million in space, so they have $67.3 million tied up including 18 signed contracts already on the books for next year. Looking at their internal business, the restricted and unrestricted free agents. Looking at the RFAs first, you get Morgan Frost, Connor Zary, Kevin Ball, and Adam Klapka. Pretty good chance all those players get signed. I know when Frost and Farabee came over, I do wonder the future for both. I know Farabee's got a longer-term contract. I think in some ways this change of scenery was good for them, but in some ways they would have liked to have seen a little bit more too. So I'm pretty sure they all get signed, though. In my opinion, these are all these 4 RFAs. Zary especially, he'll definitely be signed, no doubt. And same with Ball. On the UFA side, Dan Vladar, so their backup goaltenders, unrestricted right now. Joel Hanley, Anthony Mantha, Justin Kirkland, Dryden Hunt, and Kevin Rooney. So obviously, there's players there that, you know, they're not difficult to replace. Now, I'm curious to see what they do with Vladar. I would think that there's a pretty good chance he could come back, but you know, if you would have thought they might have extended him already. But some of these players, they probably wanted to wait and see what the end of the season looked like before they really made a decision. They also want to get an idea what else might be available for potential replacement should they decide to go in that direction. Now, looking at players who are going to be entering the final year of their contracts after July 1st, which means they'd be eligible for an extension, would include some key names like Dustin Wolf, of course. So obviously they're going to want to get Wolf locked up. I mean, their goalie of the future here, Captain Michael Backlund, big defenseman Rasmus Anderson, Ryan Lomberg, Martin Pospisil, Jake Bean, and Dmitry Miramanov. So a lot of these players, I can see a good chunk of them sticking around. It's hard to say if they go the route of doing extensions for many of them. I do think Wolf would be probably the biggest one to watch. Whether or not they sign Rasmus Anderson is a big question, and certainly another topic we're going to cover here in the next segment, which is a good segue here, which is what we're referring to as the top burning questions facing the franchise. And yes, burning questions, Calgary Flames, play on words for sure. The big question for me is around Rasmus Anderson. I think it's going to be the most intriguing aspect of their summer here is, do they sign Anderson? Do they trade Anderson? And if they do trade him, does it happen this summer? Does it happen near the draft? Do they hold on? And does he become one of the bigger names at the trade deadline? They're going to have to make a decision on what they think is going to get them the bigger return should they decide to go down the trade route. As much as I like Rasmus Anderson's game, I think he's been a good fit there. I think the Flames like him. I think he likes being a Flame. But all things considered, looking at their team and what they have on their roster and coming up through the ranks here, I'm not so sure it makes sense to re-sign him to a long-term deal. So I feel it's more likely that he's going to get moved than signed. Having said that, you know, it is not a given that he gets traded during the summer here. I mean, it's quite a possibility. But if they don't like the offers, then maybe they go into the final year of the deal and they consider moving him as a trade deadline piece, hoping that the offers get better at that point. But looking at the fact that Uyghur signed long-term, you've got Zane Parekh, who needs to be in a more offensive role. So he's a top 4 defenseman. And they've got other guys there too within the organization that are going to be looking for playing time. So I just don't know that it makes sense from the organizational standpoint to sign him to a long-term contract. So that's why I think he's likely going to get moved. There's a number of teams out there that I think would take him and he'd be a good fit with. So we'll see. I think that they'll explore the trades. It's a good possibility he's one of the names we see moved at the draft. And if he's not, it could be a trade deadline target for other teams. Now, I mentioned as well when it comes to goaltending, I know there's no doubt Dustin Wolf is going to be the main guy and start next year, but who will be his tandem partner? Who will work with them and be the backup? Is it going to be Danny Vladar, or will they go in a new direction? Like I said, he is UFA, and he didn't have a bad season, but they also have Devin Cooley under contract next year as well. So, I mean, Cooley's a little bit of a older pro too. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of NHL experience, but he's not 20 years old either. So they could bring him in if they choose. I mean, it might be an option that they go with. So that's another question that we have to see how they handle it. It's not quite clear right now, but they definitely need more scoring going into next year. goaltending aside, scoring has to be a big focus for them. I wonder if they'll take a look at some of the bigger names that are expected to be out there in free agency, like a Brock Besser or a Nikolai Ehlers from their Canadian counterparts in Vancouver and Winnipeg, respectively. I don't see them being in on Mitch Marner. The belief is if Marner leaves the Leafs, that he's probably not going to want to play for another Canadian team. So if that's the case, that's fine. I think he's likely going to end up in the U.S. If I'm Calgary, though, do I check in and see and, kick tires a little bit? Yeah, probably. I don't know that they'd have an appetite to give him the kind of money he's looking for. And I don't know that he's going to want to, like I said, go to another Canadian market right now. So in all likelihood, I think it's more likely that if they become available, that they pivot towards your guys like your Bessers or your Ehlers. Now, I know another name, like I mentioned before, in Buffalo that's available are supposed to be available because he'd like a change of scenery is JJ Peterka. They would make a lot of sense to be in on him. Now, they could even be an offer sheet team. Calgary's a team that I think could, consider that, but we'll see. Either way, a player like Peterka would be right up their alley. If they're going to make a move in the trade market, I can see them targeting a player like that in free agency, like, Besser, Ehlers. They need to add somebody along those lines. I wonder as well if they would consider moving Sharon Govich. Had a down season. Maybe they stick with them. Maybe they hope for a bounce back. But if they're going to move anybody off the roster in the forward group, I kind of half wonder if, they would consider that. It probably depends on what the trade would look like, of course. At the 2025 NHL Draft, they're not a team with a first-round pick of their own. That pick belongs to Montreal. It's way back from the Monahan trade. They do have 2 first-round picks, though, even though they don't have their own. They have the number 18th pick overall, which is the Devils pick, and they do have the Panthers pick as well, coming from the Tkachuk trade. We don't know what that's going to be, but we know it's going to be 31 or 32. So they do have some first-rounders. I wouldn't be shocked if they were packaged together to try to move up in the draft. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to use those as assets to obtain another, younger player that could help their team and be a good improvement right away. Either way, I expect the Flames to be somewhat busy between the draft, free agency, and the trade market to wanting to add more scoring. They don't need to go out and find a ton of pieces here. I think for the most part, they like a lot of their team. They had a good season. They have a few decisions they got to make on some of their players like Frost and Zary, the goaltending. I don't know that a lot of their other UFA guys come back. They're largely replaceable. And maybe they add a little bit of depth on the open market, but otherwise, I think Craig Conroy likes his team, but he's going to want to add some kind of flair here to make them more offensive and a little harder to play against going into next season. So be curious to see what that piece turns out to be. It's not quite clear, but they're definitely going to be that. That's their need. It's as glaring as it can be. It depends on how they go about addressing it. So let me know your thoughts on the offseason here for the Calgary Flames. What activity do you expect to see from them between the draft, trades, free agency? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and we will discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.